President.
The senator from Rhode Island.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to speak for up to 15 minutes.
Without objection.
Thank you. The Senate reconvenes now after several weeks of work in our home states, and I am back for the 145th time asking my colleagues to wake up to the pressing reality of climate change. We are sleepwalking through this moment, willfully ignoring the warning signs of an already altered Earth, largely because of a decades-long corporate campaign of misinformation on the dangers of carbon pollution. Just last week, while we were back home, scientists at the International Geological Congress presented the beginning of a new geological epoch, the Anthropocene. Transitions between geological epochs are marked by a signal in the global geologic record, like the traces of the meteorite that wiped out the dinosaurs at the end of the Cretaceous epoch. What are the signals of the beginning of the Anthropocene? Humans, anthropos, have increased carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere from 280 parts per million before the Industrial Revolution to 400 parts per million and rising today. A pace of increase not seen for 66 million years, and a level never seen before in human history on this planet. We've also dumped so much plastic into our waterways and oceans that microplastic particles can be found virtually everywhere and are now even infiltrating our food chain. We've poured so much pollution into our atmosphere, that thin blue shell under which we currently thrive, that permanent layers of particulates, such as black carbon from burning fossil fuels, are left in sediments and glacial ice. The signals that we are leaving are many, and they are clear. Dr. Paul Crutzen, the Nobel Prize-winning atmospheric chemist who coined the term Anthropocene, remarked back in 2011, this name change stresses the enormity of humanity's responsibility as stewards of the Earth. His words echo those of Pope Francis, who tells us in his encyclical Laudato Si, humanity is called to recognize the need for changes of lifestyle, production, and consumption in order to combat this warming, or at least the human causes which produce or aggravate it. Yet, attempts to address climate change are stifled in this chamber by an industry-controlled, many-tentacled apparatus, deliberately polluting our discourse with phony climate denial as it pollutes our atmosphere and oceans with carbon. Polls show more than 80% of Americans favoring action to reduce carbon pollution. So our inaction signals the filthy grip these bad actors have on this chamber. Before the recess, 19 colleagues came to the floor to shine a little light on this web of climate denial spun by those actors. All told, we delivered over 5.5 hours of remarks describing the activities, the backers, and the linkages of dozens of denier groups. A growing body of scholarship examines this climate denial apparatus, including work by Harvard's Naomi Oreskes, Michigan State's Aaron McWright, Oklahoma State University's Riley Dunlap, Yale's Justin Farrell, and Drexel's Robert Bruhl. Their work reveals an intricate, interconnected propaganda web that encompasses over 100 organizations, trade associations, conservative think tanks, foundations, public relations firms, and plain old phony baloney polluter front groups. In the words of Professor Farrell, the apparatus is, quote, overtly producing and promoting skepticism and doubt about scientific consensus on climate change. Well, our little floor effort got the attention of the climate deniers. Shortly after our Web of Denial floor action, Senator Schatz and I received a letter from ExxonMobil telling us that it believes the risks of climate change are real, that it no longer funds groups that deny the science of climate change, and that it supports a carbon fee like our American Opportunity Carbon Fee Act. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to submit a copy of this letter to the record.
Without objection.
It's a nice letter, Mr. President, but its claims simply do not conform with our experience. In 2015, for instance, ExxonMobil reportedly funneled millions to groups peddling climate denial. According to its own publicly available 2015 Worldwide Global Giving Report, ExxonMobil contributed over $1.6 million to organizations that were profiled in our floor statements, including the American Legislative Exchange Council and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. ExxonMobil's letter claims the company's support for a revenue-neutral carbon tax dates back 7 years. If that were so, you would think at some point in those 7 years, Exxon executives would have expressed that support to the authors of a carbon fee bill. My and Senator Schatz's American Opportunity Carbon Fee Act meets all the relevant criteria mentioned in the letter, yet ExxonMobil has not endorsed the bill or lobbied our colleagues on its behalf or even expressed interest in meeting with either of us to discuss the Whitehouse Schatz proposal and how to make it become law. Behind ExxonMobil's professed support for a carbon fee, here is what we really see. Zero support from the corporation and implacable opposition from all ExxonMobil's main lobbying groups. The American Petroleum Institute, for instance, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and its array of various front groups. The actual lobbying position of ExxonMobil is vehemently against the revenue-neutral carbon tax ExxonMobil claims to support. Mr. President, the letter from ExxonMobil was not the only letter in response to our July floor speeches. 22 organizations in the Koch-funded network with lengthy records of climate change denial also sent a letter objecting to being characterized as Koch-linked climate deniers. This group of organizations, that purportedly is not a group, sent their letter out on a common letterhead. Since the web of climate change denial is designed to be so big and sophisticated, with so many parts, that the public is made to believe it is not a single special interest funded front, that may not have been their smartest move. Interestingly, some of the groups that participated in this letter were not even mentioned in our floor remarks. Such is the web of denial. In our reply to them, Senators Reid, Schumer, Boxer, Durbin, Sanders, Franken, Warren, Markey, and I noted that they are all well supported in the web of climate denial to the tune of at least $92 million in a network bound together by common funders, shared staff, and matched messages. It is one beast, though it may have many heads. We offer these organizations a simple test. If you're for real, disclose all of your donors. There's a lot of dark money going into these groups. So we asked, show us that you represent many, many millions of Americans, as they claimed in the letter, not just many, many millions of dollars from the Koch brothers fossil fuel network. I contend that these organizations are well-funded agents of hidden backers with a massive conflict of interest, and that it is their job to subject our country to an organized campaign to deceive and mislead us regarding the scientific consensus surrounding climate change, and to do so with the purpose to sabotage American response to the climate crisis. I contend that the conflict of interest of their hidden backers runs into the hundreds of billions of dollars. If you use the Office of Management and Budget's social cost of carbon, you can calculate the annual polluter cost to the rest of us from their carbon pollution at over $200 billion per year. Think what mischief people would be willing to get up to for $200 billion, that's with a B, dollars per year. The International Monetary Fund estimates that the effective subsidy for American fossil fuels is actually even higher, $700 billion per year. For that kind of money, Mr. President, you can fund a lot of front groups. The front group's letter points out that our founders intended for public policies to be well-informed and well-debated. Well, I could not agree more. On July 31st, leading national scientific organizations, including the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the American Meteorological Society, and the American Geophysical Union, sent members of Congress a no-nonsense message that human-caused climate change is real, that it poses serious risks to modern society, and that we need to substantially reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I will quote their letter. Observations, not theories, observations throughout the world make it clear that climate change is occurring, and rigorous scientific research concludes that the greenhouse gases emitted by human activities are the primary driver. They continued, this conclusion is based on multiple independent lines of evidence and the vast body of peer-reviewed science, end quote. That, Mr. President, is the voice of fact, analysis, and reason. We are well-informed by the real scientists. The scientists have the expertise and the knowledge and the facts. What they don't have is that massive conflict of interest that requires setting up an armada of front groups and gives them the $100 billion motivation to run this scheme. It's time, Mr. President, to let the scientists and the facts take their place. This issue has been thoroughly debated and vetted in the legitimate world. It's time now for us here in Congress to wake up to our duty and to, at last, act. I yield the floor.